Today we are going to study a very important topic and interesting too is the metals, semiconductors and superconductors. In this topic we are going to study what are the characteristic features associated with the metals. Then we are going to study regarding the band theory of metals, which is also very important during the study of this topic. Then the second theory that I'm going to study is a free electron theory. Then we are going to study the different types, that is the classification of solids into conductors, insulators and semiconductors. Then we are going to study the extrinsic and intrinsic type of semiconductors. Under extrinsic type of semiconductors, we are going to study the N-type and P-type semiconductors. After the completion of extrinsic type of semiconductors, which are also known as impurity or defect type of semiconductors, we are going to study the intrinsic type of semiconductors. During this study, we are also going to study the animation of how the N-type and P-type semiconductors, those work by doping the impurity. And last, we are going to study the ceramic superconductors. We are going to study the very important superconductor is YPa2Cu3O7, which is also known as a superconductor or 123 superconductor, and the different applications of this superconductor. First of all, I would like to start with the different characteristics, features which are associated with the metals. We know the distinctive properties of metals. Those are depend upon all these characteristic features. We are going to discuss the different properties of metallic solids with regard to the crystal structure, then the high electrical conductivity, high thermal conductivity, metallic luster, then emissivity, that is emission of electrons, then malleability and ductility. So first of all, we shall see these properties associated with the metals or with solids. As we know that the metals exhibit a specific characteristic or specific crystal structure. The crystal structure may be either FCC, what we call as face-centered cubic, or BCC, what we call as body-centered cubic structure, or HCP, which is also known as a hexagonal cubic pack type of structure. So these solids exhibit either of these type of arrangements, either FCC, which is also known as a CCP, cubic closed pack type of arrangement, BCC, or HCP. The FCC or CCP type of arrangement that can be observed in the metals such as copper, silver, and gold. All these metals, they exhibit the crystal structure of face-centered cubic, what we call as a FCC. The metals such as lithium, sodium, and potassium, they exhibit the crystal structure as BCC, And the metals such as beryllium, magnesium, and scandium, all such metals, they exhibit the crystal structure as HCP. So the distinctive properties of metals depend upon their crystal structure. Just now I have mentioned the three different types. So these structures, these metals exhibit either of these structures. Now, if we look at the second property, first property that we have studied is a crystal structure. Second property is known as high electrical conductivity. We know that metals are good conductors of electricity. The electrical conduction arises due to presence of mobile electrons, as we know. The mobile electrons, they move through the vacant space between the metal ions. So, on application of an electrical potential, these mobile electrons, they move through these vacant positions between the metal ions. The conductivity of metals, that wholly depends upon the number of mobile electrons which are present in a particular metal. If the metal contains few mobile electrons, then the current conduction in these metals is low on account of very few mobile electrons are present. If the metal contains larger number of mobile electrons, then this metal conducts the electricity, the current conduction by the metals, that is more than the previous metal. So the conductivity of metal, that depends upon the number of mobile electrons. If the number of mobile electrons increases, current conduction also increases. For example, if we take for instance sodium, magnesium, and aluminium, as we know, the valence electrons which are present in sodium, that is only one valence electron is there. If we see the valence electrons for magnesium having the outermost electron configuration is a 3s2, which is having 2 electrons, and for aluminum the valence electrons are 3. So in moving from sodium to aluminum, here aluminum is a good conductor of electricity because it is having 3 valence electrons. The another property that is exhibited by the solids is high thermal conductivity. We know when metals are heated at one end, we observe that another end of metal, that is that is that is being heated. The reason for this is that among the solid substances, metals are by far the best good conductors of heat. If we try to heat one end of a metal which contains free or mobile electrons, on heating one end of a metal, the electrons which are nearby to this point, they absorb whatever heat that is applied, and these electrons, they collide on the adjacent electrons. So because of collision of these electrons on the adjacent electrons, the heat energy is carried to the or transported to the other end. So thermal conduction also increases if the number of mobile electrons increases. The fourth important property of solids is the metallic luster. It is a very important property that is exhibited by the metals. We see that when a light falls on the surface of a metal, the metallic surface appears to be very much shiny or lustrous. It is because When the light that is falls on the surface of a metallic surface, it seems that light is being reflected. This reflectivity of light by the surface of metal is known as a metallic luster. If we want to explain this in other terms, that when the light falls on the surface of a metallic crystal, then the mobile electrons which are present on the surface of a metal, they absorb this light energy and they excite it to some higher state, and they again jump back to its ground state. During this jumping, they emit a light of a particular wavelength, and because of which we see that the light is being reflected, that is known as a metallic luster. One more property that is exhibited by metals or solids is known as emissivity. When metals are heated to a very high temperature, then the electrons which are present on the surface, these electrons, the surface of metal that emits the electrons on falling or on heating of these metals. Because of heating of the metal, the electrons, they are the surface of metal that emits electron. So because of heating of the metal, if the electrons are emitted, this is known as a thermionic emission. Sometimes the electrons are also emitted just by falling of a light on the surface of a clean metallic surface. When, because of falling of light on the surface of metal, if the electrons are emitted, this emission of electrons because of light is known as a photoelectric effect, or this is also known as a thermionic emission. So this is known as a photoelectric effect or photoelectric emission. So we have seen two different emissions. By heating of the metal, if the electrons are emitted, this is known as thermionic emission, and by falling of light on the surface of a metal, if the electrons are emitted, this is known as the photoelectric emission. One more important property that is exhibited by the metals is a malleability and ductility. We know metals are malleable, that is, they can be easily flattened into sheets, and they are also ductile, that means they can be easily brought into wires. These properties make the metals as the most useful construction materials. So we have seen the distinctive properties of metals such as crystal structure, the high electrical conductivity, high thermal conductivity, then the metallic luster, the emissivity, and the malleability and the ductility. Now, there are certain theories involved in the metals. The first theory, which is accepted universally, is known as the band theory, which was put forward by Bloch in the year 1928. Here, I would like to show you a slide with regard to this band theory, which was put forward by Bloch in the year 1928. As we know that molecular orbital theory for metallic bonding can be illustrated with the help of a very simple formation of molecule, that is lithium molecule. Now, if we want to form Li2 molecule, in the formation of Li2 molecule, that two lithium atoms, they come closer with their two s1 electrons and they form what is known as a Li2 molecule. Here I have shown the first figure, the formation of Li2, where 2s orbital of each lithium, they are involved. According to molecular orbital theory, that if two orbitals are involved, two new molecular orbitals are formed. One is having low energy, another is having high energy. The orbital having low energy is known as a bonding molecular orbital, and the orbital having high energy is known as an anti-bonding molecular orbital. Here, the two electrons from contributed by lithium from 2s atomic orbital, they are now engaged in forming bonding molecular orbital. So those two electrons are shown in bonding type of molecular orbital. If we move one step further, that is how Li3 molecule is formed, where three lithium atoms, they can contribute their three electrons. So three orbitals or participating atomic orbitals are there. Three newly formed orbitals must be there. These three molecular orbitals are, one is a bonding, second is a non-bonding, third is anti-bonding. In this case, a new orbital that is involved is known as a non-bonding molecular orbital, which is having almost the similar energy content as the participating atomic orbitals. The 2s electrons from two lithium atoms, they occupy the low energy bonding molecular orbital, and the third electron that occupies the non-bonding next higher energy level orbital after the bonding molecular orbital is a non-bonding molecular orbital, which is having almost the same energy as the participating atomic orbitals of lithium. For this reason, I have shown the non-bonding molecular orbital on the same energy level. If we move one step further, that is the formation of Li4 molecule, where four lithium atoms are involved. They contribute their 2s electrons for the formation of Li4 molecule. Here, as a four participating atomic orbitals are there, hence four newly formed molecular orbitals are to be shown. Out of four newly formed molecular orbitals, two are bonding and two are anti-bonding. The four electrons now occupy the low energy bonding molecular orbitals, and hence I have shown the four electrons contributed by four lithium atoms in bonding type of molecular orbital. So if we extend this formation of Li2 molecule up to Lin, n number of lithium atoms, when they come closer with their 2s electrons, then again n number of bonding and n number of anti-bonding molecular orbitals are produced. Here, because n number of lithium atoms are there, they can form n number of bonding molecular orbital, which can form a band of bonding molecular orbital, which are completely filled by electrons. So this is known as the valence band of lithium. Another band that is formed by n number of lithium atoms, which is having comparatively high energy, is known as the antibonding molecular orbital, which is known as the conduction band, which is known as the antibonding molecular orbital, the conduction band that is entirely empty. So because of overlapping of n number of lithium atoms, a band of orbital that is formed is known as a bonding molecular orbital, where n number of electrons are present, which is also known as a valence band. Another band that is a conduction band, which is known as an antibonding molecular orbital, which is entirely empty. Now, another theory was also put forward. That theory is known as the free electron theory. Now, in this theory, it is seen that the theory is also known as the electron gas theory, because uh, as we know that metals are having plenty of electrons, so every metal atom is surrounded by a number of electrons. Here, this theory was put forward by Lorentz. He proposed that the metals have very low ionization potential values. As we know that ionization potential or ionization energy is nothing but the amount of energy that is required to remove an electron from the outermost orbital from an isolated gaseous atom. So this energy is very, very low, which is known as ionization potential energy. So because very less amount of energy is required to remove an electron, that is the low IP values, hence the we call as these metals are electropositive. These electrons are moving or stationary with the metal atom which has lost these electrons. So this metal atom which has lost, around which the mobile electrons are revolving, these are known as the kernels, or what we call that I have shown here in the diagram, that is a metallic kernel which has lost the electrons because of low ionization potential values. So when these metal ions they merge into one another, here I have shown the second diagram where a metallic kernels having a sea of mobile electrons. These electrons which are mobile, they merge into one another. In doing so, there is a electrostatic force of attraction between the positive metal ions and the surrounding mobile negatively charged electrons, and because of which the metallic ions are held tightly in position, and hence uh, the metal ions are held together tightly in position. So the outer electrons, they are in the position to move not just around the atom but around and between the positive metal atoms, and this particular fact is proved by Lorentz with regard to the uh, free electron theory. Now if we move one step further, that how the solids they are classified into different classes on the basis of band theory of metals. The solids are classified into three different types. One is a conductor, second class is an insulator, and third is a semiconductor. As can be seen from the diagram itself, the first diagram, that is a conductor. Here I have shown two bands as we have discussed in band theory. The lowermost band, which is filled with electrons, is known as a valence band, which is abbreviated as VB, and another band, that is a conduction band, which is empty, which is also known as a CB, that is a vacant band. According to band theory of metals, valence bands are completely filled, and the next available energy band is known as a conduction band, which is shown here. This is empty. There is no gap between this VB and CB. So here, these two bands, that is a filled band, that is valence band, and empty band, that is a conduction band, these two bands are not separated. They are very much close because there is no gap between the valence band and the conduction band. So the electrons can easily move from valence band, that is filled band, to conduction band or the vacant band. So because the electrons can move very easily from the valence band to conduction band, such solids are known as a conductors. So the electrons can easily move from valence band to conduction band, and hence such solids are known as a conductors. The second diagram that I have shown, again this diagram contains the valence band and the conduction band. But these two bands are separated by a very large energy gap. Now, as there is a very large energy gap between the valence band, that is which is low in energy, and the conduction band, that is a vacant band, electrons cannot move from the filled band to vacant band. So these electrons, they are unable to move from the lower valence band to conduction band, so they do not conduct any electricity, and hence these are non-conducting materials which we call as insulators. So insulators are the materials where we can find that there is a large energy gap between the valence band and the conduction band. If we move to the third figure of semiconductor, here again two bands are shown, but there is a very small energy gap between the valence band and the conduction band. So the solids which are insulators at absolute zero temperature, but their conductivity increases with a rise in temperature are known as semiconductors. So here, because there is a very small energy gap between conduction band and the valence band, the electrons can easily move from the lower conduction band to higher vacant band. So the properties of such materials, that is semiconductors, those lies between those of metallic good conductors and non-metallic insulators. In such case, the band theory states that the valence band and the conduction band are separated by a very small energy gap, which I have shown here. Therefore, with the sufficient energy, the electrons can overcome the narrow gap between the valence band and the conduction band, which accounts for the conductivity of semiconductor. So at low temperature, the thermal energy of electrons is insufficient to overcome the energy gap between the valence band and the conduction band, and hence on increasing the temperature, the electrons can move easily from valence band to conduction band. After this, we shall move to the extrinsic type of semiconductors. As we know that there are two different kinds of semiconductors, namely extrinsic and intrinsic semiconductors. What are these extrinsic type of semiconductors? As we know, these extrinsic type of semiconductors, these are also known as the impurity or defect semiconductors. The semiconducting characteristics of pure silicon and germanium can be improved by adding small amounts of either a trivalent or a pentavalent impurity. The trivalent impurity, which belongs to group 13 of the periodic table, for example, either barium, aluminum, or gallium, they contain three valence electrons, or the pentavalent impurity from group 15, that is either phosphorus, arsenic, or antimony. These 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 atoms contain five valence electrons. These atoms which act as the charge carriers, that means these impurity atoms, they can act as a charge carriers. Such electrical conductivity of a semiconductor is called extrinsic semiconductivity. So when the current conduction is done with the help of the added impurity, this is known as the extrinsic semiconductivity, conduction due to externally added substances. And such duped intrinsic semiconductors are called as extrinsic semiconductors, or sometimes called as impurity semiconductors or defect semiconductors. Based on the nature of the dopant, that is either from group 13 or group 15, that is trivalent impurity or pentavalent impurity, the semiconductors can be classified as the in two different types, as the N-type semiconductors or P-type semiconductors. Now, if we move to the first type, that is the N-type semiconductor, which I have shown here in diagrammatic show. Here, the intrinsic semiconductors containing the pentavalent donor impurity like phosphorus, arsenic, or antimony. For example, if we take for instance phosphorus, having the outermost electronic configuration has 3s2 3p5, that means phosphorus is having the 5 valence electrons. It is seen that if the impurity like phosphorus that is added to pure silicon crystal having 5 valence electrons, then the crystal lattice of silicon, here I have shown the silicon crystal where one of the silicon atom from the crystal that is replaced by this dopant phosphorus. That is, some of the silicon atoms are replaced by this pentavalent impurity. For this reason, I have shown +5, that is phosphorus, 5 electrons for phosphorus at the center. So here, initially silicon atoms were present, which are surrounded by 4 silicon atoms, but by adding a phosphorus, that is a pentavalent impurity, the some of the silicon atoms are replaced by this phosphorus atom. They can contribute 4 electrons. Now each doped atom forms 4 covalent bonds with the surrounding silicon atoms, which I have shown here. So +5, which is surrounded by +4. That means this, the amongst the 5 electrons from the impurity, they contribute their electrons, and 1 electron from surrounding silicon and 1 electron from phosphorus. They can form a covalent bond with the surrounding 4 silicon atoms. So every phosphorus atom has a free electron, which is shown in the diagram. In this case, the extra electron that is present inside this crystal, it is seen that I have shown in the diagram that extra electron that is present, that is a pentavalent impurity which acts as a donor atom. So every crystal is having such extra electron. Here, this extra electron which is present, that forms a band near the conduction band, which is empty. In this diagram I have shown. So this extra electron can form a band near the conduction band. This band is known as electron donor band, that is a EDB. The original energy gap between the valence band and the conduction band is very large enough, but due to presence of an extra electron, that is because of the addition of pentavalent impurity, this electron can form an electron donor band near the conduction band, which reduces the energy gap between the conduction band, and that forms a separate energy band. Now here it is seen that according to the band theory of metals, the replacement of silicon by phosphorus atom in the crystal lattice, the extra valence electron form a new energy band called electron donor band in between the valence band and the conduction band, that is shown here. Secondly, this extra electron occupy the energy level called electron donor band just below the vacant conduction band of silicon crystal. Now, at absolute zero temperature or at a low temperature, the electron remains localized on the parent atom, that is with phosphorus atom. However, at room temperature, electrons from donor level can be easily excited to the valence conduction band. So the electrons which I have shown near the conduction band, that is known as the electron donor band, that can be easily moved to the conduction band by the application of an electrical current, where they can carry current quite readily. Since the current is carried here by the movement of negatively charged electrons, and hence such impurity semiconductors are known as N-type semiconductors, where the current conduction is done with the help of negatively charged electrons. So the letter N stands for negative electrons. So since the current is carried by negatively charged electrons, it is N-type semiconduction, and the silicon or germanium crystal doped with phosphorus is called N-type extrinsic type of semiconductor. So in brief, in case of N-type semiconductor, silicon crystal is doped with a pentavalent impurity such as phosphorus. Phosphorus contributes 4 electrons for the formation of bond between phosphorus and silicon. One extra electron that is left in the crystal lattice that forms an electron donor band near the conduction band, and on application of electric current, this electron can easily move to the conduction band, and as the current conduction is done with the help of a negatively charged electrons, hence it is known as an n-type semiconduction. This is also I have shown in the form of an energy profile diagram, where I have shown that there is a large energy gap between valence band and the conduction band, but because of presence of electron donor band, this energy gap is lowered, and electrons from this electron donor band, they can easily move to the empty or vacant conduction band. So this is all about the n-type semiconduction. The second is known as the p-type semiconductor. Here in this diagram, I have shown again the crystal that is either silicon or germanium crystal. In this case, a trivalent impurity that is added to the pure crystal. That is, in p-type semiconductors, if an impurity of group 13, say for example, barium, aluminum or gallium that is added, in having 3 electrons, that is Ns2, Np1 is added to the crystal lattice of silicon or germanium, some of the silicon atoms are replaced by this added impurity, which I have shown in this diagram, that the silicon atom is replaced by the trivalent impurity. Here, some of the silicon atoms are replaced by the trivalent impurity atoms. Since the impurity atoms contribute only 3 electrons, some of the sites normally occupied by the electrons in this crystal will be left empty. That means the doped impurity, which is trivalent in nature, can furnish only 3 electrons for the formation of bonds with silicon atoms. But in formation of 4th bond with 4th silicon atom, only silicon can contribute its atom, but as the impurity is a trivalent impurity, no electrons are contributed, which remains an empty hole, which I have shown here. Now, in this case, the process of doping creates electron vacancies called positive holes, which I have shown in the diagram. These holes occupy the energy level called electron acceptor band, which is present just above the valence band, which I have shown here. So here, in this case, the case is exactly reverse. In this case, because there is a hole that is created, this can form a band of electron acceptor level just above the valence band. Now, these holes, they can occupy the energy level called an electron acceptor band, that is EAB, that exists close to the field valence band of silicon or germanium crystal. And as we know, at absolute zero temperature or at low temperature, the positive holes are localized around the doped atoms. That means the empty sites which are around the doped atoms. However, when an when an electrical field is applied, the adjacent electrons from the crystal, the adjacent electrons from the valence band are promoted to the vacant acceptor band. That means the moment of electrons which I have shown, that is a movement of electrons from valence band to the electron acceptor band on application of electrical potential. So by a series of such jumps, positive holes can migrate across the crystal. This is equivalent to moving an electron in the opposite direction. Thus, the current conduction, I have shown here, the flow of electrons to the positive terminal and the flow of holes to the negative terminal. That means flow of holes to the negative terminals. Now in this case, the current is carried by the migration of positive holes, and hence This is known as a p-type semiconduction, and the crystal grouped with either barium, aluminum, or gallium or indium is called p-type extrinsic type of semiconductor. Now here, if a hole that migrates, the adjacent electron occupies this hole, which creates a new hole just by moving of the holes which are positive. The current conduction is done, and because of which, as the current conduction is done with the help of a positive holes, and hence such semiconducting property that is known as the p-type semiconducting semiconduction. Now here I would like to show you how this n-type and p-type semiconductors are can work. I am having a video. Just by looking this video, you can see how. So this is how the current conduction carried out in the p-type and n-type semiconductors. We shall move again to the another type of semiconductors where we are going to study the second type, that is a intrinsic type of semiconductor. We have seen all these parameters. The semiconducting action that is also shown in this diagram also. Now, in brief, if we want to conclude this n-type and p-type semiconductors, that in case of n-type semiconductors, silicons are doped with pentavalent impurity. In p-type, a trivalent impurity is added. Because of presence of pentavalent impurity, one extra electron there is there, which are charge carriers. But in case of p-type semiconductors, a trivalent impurity is added, and hence holes are there, and holes are positively charged, which act as a charge carriers. Now, in this case, if we look at the second type, is known as the intrinsic type of semiconductor, where we have seen, just a minute. In case of intrinsic type of semiconductors, we are having with a pure silicon crystal or germanium crystal, silicon having atom number 40, germanium having atom number 32. These are the two crystals which are having, which are which act as an insulator at low temperature or at 0 degree centigrade. But when the temperature is increased above 0 degree centigrade, they act as intrinsic semiconductor. In this case, silicon and germanium, as we know, silicon having outermost electronic configuration 3s to 3p2, and germanium having electronic configuration 4s to 4p2. The crystal structure of these two elements shows that each atom of these elements is bounded by 4 covalent bonds. So every silicon is surrounded by 4 silicon atoms, and all its valencies are satisfied. Thus, each atom is associated with 8 electrons. That means every silicon forms 2 bonds with the surrounding 4 silicon atoms. So 2 electrons are engaged in forming bonds. So in all, 8 electrons are contributed, and hence it is relatively very stable because of condition of 8 electrons, that is octet. At a very low temperature of 0 degree centigrade, the 2 electrons which are engaged in the formation of covalent bond are very tightly bound in their position, and hence they cannot move freely. Consequently, the crystal of silicon and germanium at low temperature act as an insulator because of 8 electrons are present, condition of 8 electrons, a stable configuration. Now, when the temperature of the crystal is increased above 0 degree centigrade, one of the covalent bond gets broken. That means the bond that is present between two silicon atoms, adjacent silicon atoms or germanium atoms, that that bond that breaks, and because of breaking of one of the covalent bonds, one of the 2 electrons in the covalent bond between these two silicon atoms move through the crystal. The movement of electron increases a positive hole at the site of the missing cation. So from the site, the electron missing, a positive hole is created. This positive hole is vacant, and hence an electron present in the nearby covalent bond now moves into this vacant positive hole, and thus a fresh positive hole is created in the nearby covalent bond because of movement of electron. Under the influence of electrical potential, the holes are filled by the added electrons and free electrons move towards the positively charged electrode. That is, holes move towards negatively charged electrode and electrons towards the positively charged electrons. Thus, conduction is carried out. This semiconducting action can be explained on the basis of band theory, that is, a very small forbidden gap that is present between the valence band, that is a filled band, and the conduction band, that is vacant or empty band. It is present in the silicon crystal. At low temperature, it acts as an insulator. At high temperature, the electrons can easily jump to the conduction band from the valence band. And because of jumping of these electrons, which accounts the intrinsic semiconducting property in silicon crystal. Now, if we want to enlist certain applications of these semiconductors, then these semiconductors have acquired a unique position in modern engineering and technology. Semiconductors have limitless applications for number of purposes. Semiconductors are used for numerous purposes. They find applications as in case of calculators, electronic watches, hearing aids, solar batteries, computers, satellites, radio and TV sets for electroplating, etc. In addition to the semiconductors, in addition to all these applications, the semiconductors, they can find several applications as to control the current intensity and voltage to certain extent, and to convert sound energy into electrical energy to enhance the rate of chemical reactions. Thus, semiconductors act as the catalyst, and semiconductors are also used in aeroplanes, supersonic devices, etc. So, this is all about the intrinsic type of semiconductors. After this, we shall move to the next very important aspect of this topic, that is known as the superconductivity. Now, in superconductivity or superconductors, we are going to study how these superconductors can be made. Now, as we know that superconductors are the materials that conduct electricity with no resistance. This means that conductors such as copper or steel, a superconductor can carry a current indefinitely without losing any energy. We know that the current conduction is done with the help of a copper wires. There is much more losses from the source to the any industry. For example, during this transmission of electricity from one end to another end, there is much more losses are there. For this purpose, these superconductors are made. So, with regard to ceramic superconductors, in 1911, the phenomenon of superconductivity was discovered by Dutch scientist Kamerlingh Onnes. A superconductor has zero or almost zero electrical resistance. It can therefore carry an electric current without losing energy. It was proved that mercury is a superconductor below 4.2 kelvins. This phenomenon is known as superconductivity. There are different methods which are followed. One method that is named as a sintering method, by which these superconductors can be made. Another is the sputtering or chemical vapor deposition method. This method is widely used. One more method is there I would like to mention is a chemical deposition method and electro deposition method. The method that we are going to discuss here is known as the chemical vapor deposition method, which is generally known as a CVD method. In March 1987, one of the most significant ceramic superconductor was reported by Wushu and co-workers. This is a mixed oxide type of material based on YBaCuO system formulated as YBa2Cu3O7, which became superconducting as a 93 Kelvin. Such materials are called as warm superconductors or high temperature superconductors, are as they work at very high temperature. Here in the diagram, chemical vapor deposition diagram, we have shown the different parts of this method. In electronic devices, semiconductors are used in the form of thin films. These thin films are made with the help of this chemical vapor deposition method. For this purpose, the method that is named as the chemical vapor method deposition, or the in this particular method, volatile complexes of metals such as copper, yttrium, and barium are held at temperature T1, T2, and T3 as shown. So the first container, which contains copper, second contains, that is T2, contains yttrium, and third, that is T3, which contains barium, which are held at the temperatures T1, T2, and T3. These can provide desired vapor pressure. The desired vapor pressure that can be maintained for each reactants in these three vessels. The reactants are now then swept into the reaction chamber by using a reactive carrier gas mixture, which contains the noble gas such as argon, which is shown at the top, argon, oxygen, and water vapor. These are used to swept this copper, yttrium, and barium onto the film, which is deposited at, in this diagram, which I have shown here. The mixture of argon, oxygen, and water vapor through these taps are shown in the figure. Proper conditions are controlled in this chemical vapor deposition method. The desired YBa2Cu3O7 film is deposited on the wedge-shaped block, which is shown in the diagram. And here, this thin film, as soon as it is formed, it is dried or annealed with the help of infrared radiation, which are passed through the infrared light, which is shown here. After the deposition, the thin film will be amorphous. It is annealed to a very high temperature to get a desired crystallinity of the film. So the desired crystallinity that can be obtained by annealing of this thin film. So after the formation of this YBa2Cu3O7, we shall discuss the structure for this ceramic superconductor, which is shown in this case. Here, I have not found any diagram, a simple diagram. So I have drawn the diagram for the proper understanding, because the structure of this ceramic superconductor, that is very difficult to understand. So from my knowledge, I have drawn this structure. Another structure is also shown here, that ceramic superconductor is also called as 1-2-3 superconductor from the proportion of the metals, that is Y, Ba, and Cu, in the ratio 1:2:3. The structure is similar to a peroxide, but with some missing oxygen atoms. Hence, we can write that in the formula YBa2Cu3O7 X, that some of the oxygen atoms are missing. The structure for ceramic superconductor comprises of three cubes, which I have shown. one cube that is at the bottom, another is at the above this cube, another cube is placed, and the third cube which is also placed. I have numbered these as 1, 2, and 3 cubes. The structure is somewhat elongated or tetragonal unit cell. From the figure, it is clear that the lower and upper cubes, if you look carefully, then the lower and upper cubes have barium ions which I have shown at the center, while the central cube or the middle cube has yttrium ion at the body center, and the copper ions in all these three cubes which I have shown at the corners of the three cubes. Because copper is present at the corner, copper is having a variable oxidation state, it is plus 2.33. Because of this variable oxidation state of copper, the superconductivity property is observed in ceramic superconductors. So this is how a structure which is closely resembles to that of peroxide structure, where three cubes are placed one above the other. And if we see the cube number 1, which is having a copper at the corner, barium at the body center, and three corners are occupied by three oxygen atoms. So first cube, the composition of which is CuBaO3. Then the second cube, which I have shown, where yttrium is at the body center, which is surrounded by a copper ion at the corner and three oxygen atoms at the three corners, which comprise of CuO3. And the lowermost cube, which contains barium at the body center, copper at the corner, and three oxygen atoms again at the three corners, which forms the composition as CuBaO3. So if we add up the composition of all these three cubes, the first cube CuBaO3, second cube CuYO3, and third cube CuBaO3, it is seen that the composition of the ceramic structure, ceramic superconductor, is YBa2Cu3O7. Now, if we look at certain applications of the ceramic superconductors, then they can be enlisted as the first very important application that I would like to mention here, that ceramic superconductors show zero electrical resistance. Thus, the cables which are made up of superconducting materials, if used, then about 20% loss of electricity that during the transmission through aluminum or copper wires can largely be avoided or eliminated. Thus, ceramic superconductors are useful to carry large amount of electricity without much losses. Second important application that I would like to mention, that large magnetic field can be generated by using these ceramic superconductors. This property is applied in superfast magnetically levitated trains. The trains which can run with the speed of 500 kilometers per hour have been built. So we have heard about the bullet trains where this technology has been used. The third application of ceramic superconductor, that these superconducting materials being diamagnetic, and hence this particular property that is used in the treatment of patient with regard to the technique that is known as the MRI technique. These superconductors, they are diamagnetic and hence are used in MRI technique, what we call as magnetic resonance imaging technique. Fourth application of ceramic superconductor is that these superconductors are useful in computers, satellites, and a variety of electronic devices. So with this, I would like to conclude, but whatever we have seen in this topic, that I would like to mention once again, that in the beginning, in the introductory talk of this topic, I have given you the reference of the properties of the metals such as crystal structure, high electrical conductivity, high thermal conductivity, then the metallic luster, emissivity, malleability, and the ductility. Secondly, we have seen the two theories of very important with regard to the metals. That is a band theory, which was proposed by Bob Bloch in 1928, and second theory that is known as the free electron theory, which was proposed by Lorentz. Then we have studied the classification of solids, where we have seen the conductor, insulator, and the semiconductor with regard to the conduction band and the valence band. Then we have seen the types of semiconductors with regard to the extrinsic, that is N-type and P-type semiconductors, where in extrinsic semiconductors we have seen the N-type semiconductors which are formed by doping a pentavalent impurity, and in P-type semiconductor we have seen the semiconducting property by doping a trivalent impurity of boron. Then we have studied the intrinsic semiconductors, and at last we have seen how the superconductors that can be prepared by using a chemical vapor deposition method. So with this, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.